Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Um, Welcome, everyone. You are so welcome here, whether this is your first time at something like this or whether you're a part of the CU. Sorry, excuse me. My name is Rhea, and I am a first year studying Global Sustainable Development and Sociology.
I'm a second year, also studying GSD, but with politics, and my name's Sam. And we're both part of the CU, and the Christian Union's aim on campus is to spread the good news of Jesus to everyone and anyone so that people have the chance to respond to it too. And this events week is all about that. We have talks going on every day for the next 4 days, 3 talks a day, and free food, games, that sort of thing, which people can enjoy also.
So tonight we're going to be hearing a talk called Does Anyone Care About Me? Which is a really honest question that a lot of us probably think about, especially at university, whether anyone actually sees us and knows us. So Matt's going to speak for about 30 to 40 minutes today, and then there'll be a testimony, and at the end there'll be a chance to ask some questions. So make sure to be thinking about those questions while you hear the talk.
And just some admin bits and bobs to get through. We will be taking pictures through this event. So if you don't want your picture taken for whatever reason, there are orange lanyards at the back which you can put on, and you won't be in any photos, I can assure you of that. There are fire exits, which I have to mention. So there's 3 behind you over there, and 1 back here, which are marked, and 2 others down here. And if you're exiting here, the refuge point is Roots. If you go that way, the refuge point is the Piazza. And if you have accessibility needs, the refuge point is the Chancellor's bar area. And the final thing I have to say is phones, please could we keep them off, just on silent. It helps avoid any distractions, and it's useful for everyone. So if people could do that, we'd be very grateful.
Okay, so do you want to invite Matt up to the stage?
Yeah, Matt.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So Matt, who are you? What are you here for? What do you do? What's your background?
Choice of microphones. Hi everyone. My name's Matt. I work for an organisation called the Universities and Colleges Christian Fellowship, which exists across Britain to help Christian unions and universities run events like this. I live in Cambridge with my wife and my children. There's 6 of them and 1 dog. It's a full house.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, do you have a question?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, sorry, my throat has gone a bit. So I have a question for you to kind of get the ball rolling for the talk you're about to do. So what is an embarrassing childhood memory that you have?
Man, an embarrassing childhood memory. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to expose myself in front of everyone.
You're welcome.
I think embarrassing childhood memory, everybody's got the ones where you wave at someone thinking they're your mum, and then it turns out they're not, don't you? Like, we've all done that. We have all done that, right? Yeah, good. Or your dad or something. Yeah, I'm glad that. Who's watched Home Alone 2? Right, you know the moment in the hotel swimming pool when Kevin jumps in, but the swimming trunks he's wearing are way too big for him, and then the next thing is, yikes, and he pulls his swimming trunks away because they're no longer on him. Yeah, that happened to me once. My mum had bought me some new swimming trunks. They were about 2 sizes too big. I dived into a swimming pool, and my swimming trunks left me behind. That's probably, I cringe thinking about it right now, that's probably the most embarrassing thing that may have ever happened to me, let alone from childhood.
I'm so sorry for making you relive that. Well, I guess it was your fault. I mean, thanks for sharing, though. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I guess we'll let you get on with your talk.
Great, thanks very much. Cool, and that question might have felt slightly random, but it is actually slightly related to the topic we're going to be thinking about tonight. I wonder if you, like me, have ever had an experience like that, something that's, even now, as I've talked about one of my most embarrassing moments, you're already, like, it's playing through your head. One of your most embarrassing moments. It's the kind of thing that you don't think about all the time, but you do think about at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're awake inexplicably every now and then and think, why did that happen? And it was like a decade ago still. But it still comes back. You ever felt so embarrassed that it makes your toes curl? And your toes are curling in your shoes right now, even as I even start talking about the subject. It's something you were caught doing, perhaps, something that accidentally happened to you, like to me, something you said that you wish to this day you could take back, something you did that you wish to this day you could erase, kind of makes your cheeks burn even thinking about it. Maybe even right now you're thinking, am I blushing? Am I starting to go red? And it feels like, because I'm talking about the kind of thing all the rest of us kind of know, like that there's an X-ray on you right now, that if I look at you hard enough, I'm going to know what that thing is. Ever felt that way? I think most of us have felt that way from time to time. And it leaves us in this weird place, that this areas of our lives, maybe it's light-hearted things like your swimming trunks falling off, or maybe it's harder things that we'd rather not talk about. And we're kind of relieved that no one else really knows about, apart from perhaps your brothers who mock you mercilessly, that happened to you one day when you were in the swimming pool with them. I wonder, have you ever felt relieved, though, in conversation that someone doesn't really know you? That they don't actually really know what you think about something, or what you might say, or what you've done, that they don't really know you? It can be really light-hearted. We can think about our most embarrassing moment, but it can also be really hard, can't it? It can be a pretty tough thing to think about. We all have parts of our lives, parts of us, that we tend to try and keep hidden, to try and conceal. We want to play by the rules of whatever group we're in, that we might fit in. Maybe it's the unpopular opinion that actually nobody at university knows that you think, but if they did, they'd react like that. Maybe it's that. Or maybe it's the hobby that you secretly love, but haven't really engaged in since before university, because it just doesn't really fit your university persona anymore. I remember discovering with absolute amazement a friend of mine who I'd known for 4 years, who had been in the army, was kind of training as a doctor at university, and he was sponsored by the army, and he was going off on army exercise all the time, and he was also in the university rugby team, the first 15, secretly absolutely loved Warhammer and also ballet. And it was like, this doesn't fit with the person that I know you are. And we discovered this about him completely by accident. And he was initially appalled that we'd found out. This isn't the me that you all know. It doesn't fit. And he felt ashamed. Sometimes, though, these kind of things, they can be darker, can't they? They can be things that you really would rather not think about at all. Decisions that you made, decisions that were made about you, things you've done, and maybe, tragically, things that have been done to you. You know the kind of things I'm talking about, right? It's the things that, it's not just embarrassment, it's shame. That kind of embarrassment that then just clings to you. And all the way through, as you walk through your day, it feels like it's just kind of weighing you down. It's the thing that's tied around your ankle, the thing that's weighing on your shoulder. There is a deep shame about some of these things. And shame is a troubling phenomenon. It is increasingly talked about in the UK culture. Those of you who are not from UK culture, you might have noticed this, that increasingly over the last few years in the UK, shame is talked about, theories are suggested, suggestions are made of how we might deal with it, but there is a pretty much universal theory which is on the increase. The whole idea of shame is on the increase. And it's a troubling phenomenon because at the root of shame is the emotion that we call, well, we might call it embarrassment, or we might call it worse, humiliation. Did you know that the emotion humiliation has been shown by neuroscientists to be stronger than even happiness or anger? The effects that it has on our brain when we feel embarrassment or humiliation lights up all of the same areas of our brain as physical pain does. So is it any wonder that people can feel traumatized by things that have happened that have made them feel that way in the past? And the result is that it can cause people to, well, behave in all sorts of ways. Sometimes to lash out, sometimes to be angry themselves, but perhaps more often it causes people to cut and run, or to hide, to conceal those parts of themselves. But you know, at its worst, This kind of thing, this humiliation and shame, it can destroy a life. It can completely wreck someone's life. And yet, we have a very strange relationship with shame when it comes to Western UK culture. A very strange relationship. Because it seems that although we know how awful it is, and we would hate to be at the center of it ourselves, we also, in our culture, some seem to relish it. Monica Lewinsky would describe herself as patient zero of the internet shame culture. When 30 years ago, some of her misdemeanors with the then United States president were uncovered. And she said this, she said last year as she was reflecting on what happened to her nearly 30 years ago, or just over 30 years ago, she said, "We are caught in a feedback loop of defame and shame, one in which we have become both perpetrators and victims." In terms of the public, perhaps the most recent person to have experienced this, or two people, would be this couple. Recognize them? Yeah, of course you do. The Coldplay couple, the Coldplay wife, right? And within minutes of that clip hitting the internet, internet sleuths were finding out their identities and ruined their lives. Do you know, the lady in this picture, the one who's known as the Coldplay wife, her name is Kristen Cabot. The truth is that she had actually been estranged from her husband for at least a year before that Coldplay concert. But the internet sleuths jumped on her and said that she must be doing something wrong, mustn't she, because of the way she responded to being on that big screen. And last year, just in December, she was interviewed, and this is what she said about her experience. In that moment, she said, "Everything flashed before my eyes." And then she, reflecting on the experience, she said, "Maybe the attention might have been fair if I was famous or something, but I'm not some celebrity. I'm just a mum from New Hampshire. She's just a normal person." And suddenly her shame is being paraded in front of the entire world. And we all know, I noticed the response, we all know exactly who that is. We laughed when she came up on the screen. But that's what shame can do. That's when it's very public. But the difficulty is that smaller things like that happen every day. You ever said something before thinking, you know, that moment where you hear your own voice saying some words and you're like, I don't remember thinking those. And before they're even out of your mouth, you're thinking, oh man, what are you saying? Don't say those things. You're trying to catch the words before they kind of reach the ears of the people that you're talking to. You can't get them back. What have you done? Are you hearing yourself? Stop. And suddenly it's too late and you're standing there feeling almost as though you're standing completely naked in front of someone. I am just ashamed. What on earth have I just done? Now, most of us don't have kind of international headlines, kind of parading our shame, revealing our moment of greatest embarrassment. But for many, the idea of shame still shapes their lives. Did you know 1 in 4 18 to 25-year-olds in the UK today have experienced body shaming, which they would say influences the way they see themselves, the way they feel about themselves every day. 1 in 4 18 to 25-year-olds. And it leaves scars. It's an enormous contributor to depression and anxiety. It's an enormous contributor to self-harm. It's an enormous contributor to substance abuse. And all of that prompted the journalist John Ronson a few years ago, as he was writing about this phenomenon in a book called So You've Been Publicly Shamed, to say this. He said, "We know that people are complicated and have a mixture of flaws and talents and sins." He's not a Christian. So why do we pretend that we don't? Why do we pretend we don't have that? Because that's the rules, isn't it? Those are the rules we play the game of life by, the rules that we play relating to one another by. We present an exterior which says we are presentable and there is no shame here, which means we have to hide all the things that might cause that shame. And it's worse, that can become a story that we end up telling ourselves about ourselves. The psychologist, Dr. Brené Brown, describes it this way. She says, shame is the intensely painful feeling that we are unworthy of love and belonging. Or John Ronson puts it pretty pithily when he says, shame internalized can lead to agony. And I'm aware that there may be some people in the room for whom this is a conscious everyday experience. Decisions made by or about you. Things done by or worse to you in the past leave scars. But even for those of us for whom that is not an everyday reality, it's always lurking there in the background. There are always those parts of us that we feel uncomfortable opening up about, or that we would never open up about because it would just be far too uncomfortable, which means that the question lurks constantly, what if I got found out? What if someone really knew me? What if someone really saw me all the way through, everything about me? That's a frightening thought. But here's the thing, it leaves us with a tension, because at the same time as all of this, there is an inescapable longing in all of our hearts to be known, to be in a good relationship with other people, that someone might know me fully and yet love me. So we want to be known, we long to be known, and at the same time, we fear to be seen. And we're caught in the middle of this conundrum. What are we to do? I long to be known, and yet I fear to be fully seen. How on earth could we possibly resolve that tension? How could anyone resolve that tension? And really, it's that tension that we're going to be thinking about a little bit tonight, and why Christians believe that the good news of Jesus is an answer to that question. But actually, before we get there, as I said last night, for those of you who are here, one of the most important things we want to do during this week, that Warwick CU wants to do during this week, is to give people the opportunity to discuss these sorts of questions. And so all the way through our evenings, we are going to give some space for you to be able to discuss and battle around the questions that we are talking about. So I'm going to pause just now and give you an opportunity just to think a little bit about around this topic. Now, it might be that already there are things going around in your mind. You're like, oh, that's an interesting point. I'd like to pick that up. Or I'm not sure I agreed with that. That's absolutely fine. You don't have to agree with anything I say. But if you do not agree, then in a minute when we start discussing, feel free to turn to the person next to you and say, I didn't agree with what he said, on one proviso, that you're prepared for the person next to you to say, oh, that's interesting, why? And have the conversation that proceeds from there. But if it would help, here's a couple of questions to get some discussions going around the tables. First question, where do you think the desire to be seen and known by others comes from? Why are we wired that way? How would you answer that question? Why are humans wired in such a way that we long to be seen and known? And secondly, why do you think being seen can feel frightening rather than freeing? Why do you think being seen can feel frightening rather than freeing? I'm going to give you a few minutes, 5 minutes, maybe a little bit more, to be able to talk about those around your tables, and I'll be back in a moment. All right, I'm going to break into those conversations just there. My apologies. There will be more opportunity to keep on discussing, at least 2 more times while I'm still here, and then more over dinner later on as well. But as we kind of dive into this question, here's the nuts and bolts of the question that we're thinking about this evening, about that tension between longing to be known and fearing to be seen. It sort of pulls us in 2 directions, doesn't it? We end up moving towards people and yet holding ourselves back because we just worry if they saw everything about me, maybe they wouldn't want to know me. How do we live in that tension? Is there a way of us being able to resolve that tension? Because it really would be good news if we could resolve that tension. And as Christians, we want to say that the answer is found in Jesus, and in an episode in particular in Jesus' life, which we'll find on the pages of these books that are just in front of you. So I'd really love you to grab one of these from in front of you. It'd be great if everyone could pick one up. These are a copy of Luke's Gospel, a book in the Bible written by a first-century physician, a doctor called Luke. And they are an account of the life of Jesus. And if you turn to page 63 in these booklets, we'll find an episode that happens somewhere towards the first third or so of this account of Jesus' life. And what you need to know as we reach this point, page 63 of these books, is that Jesus is right at his peak as far as Luke is concerned. So as Luke tells the story of Jesus' life, Jesus is at like the peak of his popularity. If we'd had the time to read the 7 chapters of Luke that come before this, we'd have found the stories of Jesus doing incredible things. We'd have read the stories of his birth and the amazing stories of his birth that make up the Christmas story. Then we'd have read of him healing people and teaching in a way which draws people towards him, and people are flocking around him. In order to understand what Luke is saying, what I'm saying, you don't necessarily have to say, I believe all of those things happened, but you need to be in the story to understand what is happening next as far as Luke is concerned, as he tells the story of Jesus. Jesus is at the peak of his popularity. And the question is that fame going to fade? Because he's just been on a trip out of the main area where he's been doing all of these things. He's just been on a trip. He comes back. And as we reach little number 40 on page 63, the question is he kind of passing fad? Is he about to fizzle out? And the answer is, well, no. Have a look at little number 40. When Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. This crowd gathers because they're hearing Jesus is on his way back to their region, and they want some more of him. They want more of his healing and this teaching, this amazing things that he's doing. So they flock ready to receive him. And Jesus arrives and the crowd's already there, kind of pressing in on him, jostling and shoving and pushing, all wanting to try and get a piece of Jesus. And it's almost as though Luke says, okay, right, you've seen the crowd. I want to show you one person. I want to show you one person in the crowd. He starts scanning the crowd. Where is this guy? Where is this guy? Look, there he is. He's coming through the crowd. Have a look at little number 41. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. This guy walks up. He's well dressed. He's revered. As we see the crowd parting to let him come through to see Jesus, we recognize he is deeply respected. To understand who Jairus is, you need to try and cross a religious leader and a member of parliament in your head, but then add respect, right? So a religious leader and a member of parliament, but actually respected. That's who Jairus is. And he's also, though, he's desperate. His little girl is dying, and he wants Jesus to come. What's Jesus going to do? Well, in the context of Luke, Jesus has been working miracles, like healing this little girl, all the way through. So, of course, he comes. In fact, he says straight away, I will come. But then, immediately, it's like Luke's standing by our side again. All right, the crowd is shoving and pushing as they're on their way to see Jesus do this miracle. You can imagine the anticipation. He's going to do it. Did you hear? Jairus said his daughter is dying. Jesus said he's going to come. We all know what's going to happen next. The anticipation is building, so the crowd go with him. Jesus is striding along down the road, the crowd jostling and pushing, and Luke's at our shoulder saying, wait, I want to show you someone else. Where is she? He starts scanning the crowd. Where is she? Where is she? She's hard to see. And then finally, he sees her. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. Little number 43. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. It looks like there she is. Look, watch her. Watch her. And as you watch her, you realize this is a woman who couldn't be more different to Jairus, the well-respected, well-dressed religious leader, member of parliament. This is a woman who is pale, and she is poor. She's wearing rags. She's not just poor, she's destitute. But she is like Jairus in one important way. She is also desperate. She's been sick for 12 years. No one has been able to help her. She has experienced pain and embarrassment and shame because of her illness, subject to a gynecological condition, bleeding for 12 years, before any modern sanitary products had ever been even thought of, let alone invented. All her prospects are gone. In her culture, there is no prospect of her getting married. There is no prospect of her having children. There is no prospect of her getting a job. And she has to live in a way which is excluded from the rest of society. That's the culture she lives in. But for her, her loneliness is matched only by her shame. Her society actually has laws which keep her separate from crowds like this. For 12 years, she has been rendered, because of this illness, literally untouchable. She's had to social distance for 12 years. Remember that? For just 2 years? And all the time, she's been carrying a constant reminder in her body that there is a brokenness in the world, and a constant reminder in the relationships that she no longer has with those around her that there is a brokenness. And that is a hard place to be. That's where she lives. And the tragic thing is that all too many people know something of what that's like. Again, decisions that have been made by you or about you, or things that have been done by you or about you have rendered you something similar to this woman. Potential feels like it's lost. I haven't been able to live up to the opportunities I might have had because I did this or that, or I said this or that, or this or that was done or said about me. Potential stolen, even. And perhaps the burning question, what is God doing? That's where she lives. But as we watch her, there is a bright spark in her eyes. She hasn't given up hope yet. By convention, she's not even supposed to be near this crowd, let alone in it, pressing, jostling. To touch her means to be rendered unclean, according to her illness and according to the convention of the time. But she has not given up hope. So Luke says, don't worry about that. Watch her. Watch what she's doing. Watch her as she edges closer and closer to Jesus, near and nearer and nearer, until little number 44, Luke tells us what happens. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. And it's just one sentence, and you could almost miss it. 12 years of embarrassment and pain and shame. It's just gone with a touch. She touches Jesus' cloak, and it's gone. 12 years of all of that pain, erased, dissolved with one touch. It's worth pausing just for a moment that is Jesus' offer to anyone who is holding this book. That whatever it is that you're carrying, whatever it is that you hold and you won't want to show to anyone else, he says, bring it to me. One touch is all it takes, and shame can be removed. But actually, her story's not over. There's still more. She, according to her plan, her story's over. She had planned to get into the crowd that she shouldn't be in, touch this religious leader, Jesus' cloak, because she's sure that if she does that, she will get the healing that she so desperately wants. And then she can just slip away back to a normal life. Perhaps the opportunity to get married will still be there. Perhaps the opportunity to have a future will still be there. But her story's not over. Little number 45. Who touched me? Jesus asked. we need to see for this woman, that is her worst nightmare. The absolute worst nightmare. He knows. Somehow he knows what she has done. She, the one who would render him unclean if she touched him, a religious leader who shouldn't by law be in the crowd, has touched him, and he knows. I wonder if in that moment she was tempted to try and stay quiet. Maybe if I stay quiet, I'll get away with it. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. It's an opportunity for her, maybe she thinks. Maybe I will get away with it, but Jesus has other ideas. Little number 46, but Jesus said, someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. And suddenly she realizes there's no escape here. I can't get away with this. I wonder if the panic started to rise up in her throat, realizing she's going to have to face this religious leader whom she has just touched against all convention, against all religious and social law. She's going to have to face him. But at the same time, is there not a question that that's probably worth asking? Like, how does Jesus not know? Like, given this story, given we are supposed to believe that Jesus has healed, he's healed this woman by her touching him, are we really also to believe that Jesus doesn't know who's touched him? But of course, actually, that's the point. He's not asking this for his benefit. He's asking it for hers. Because he wants to draw her out. Have a look at little number 47. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. The crowd goes from bustling and jostling and pressing to silent and still, as Jesus says, who touched me. And then trembling, this woman comes and kneels before Jesus' feet. I imagine she probably can't lift up her eyes, but every eye is on her. As her cheeks burn, she stammers out her story. She tells her condition, all the details, 12 years, her suffering, her shame being exposed for all to see. This is far worse than losing your trunks in a pool. But not just her shame, also her deceit. The fact that she's snuck into this crowd and snuck up to Jesus and touched him without consent. John Ronson in his book points out that we use a word for moments like this. Mortified. As if part of us has died. And I wonder, as she knelt before Jesus, eyes cast down, whether she dared glance up at his face. In that moment of silence after she'd stammered out her story. What does she see there? It's not the anger or the disappointment that she expects. No, as she looks at his face, she sees a spark in his eyes, a smile dancing around the corner of his mouth. What she sees is love. And then she hears the most precious words she could possibly ever hear. Little number 48, then he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. And we might ask, why has Jesus put her through that? Why not let her go? With her healing, just let her go quietly. And the answer is because Jesus wants to affirm her publicly. Because otherwise, all he would have done with one touch is removed the pain. Remarkable enough, but he would have done nothing with her shame. She would never have been safe to tell her story. She would have always wondered, what does Jesus really think of me? He was powerful enough to save me, but if he really knew, what would he really think of me? She'd have continued to have to keep that covered. She would never know truly being seen and truly being known. But as Jesus says to her daughter, with one touch, he has removed her pain. And now with one word, he removes her shame. That is Jesus' response to shame, there in the pages of the account of his life that we have. That is how Jesus responds to shame. Unlike anything else, unlike any other response in our society. This is what makes relationship with Jesus such good news. we Christians would say. And this is what we would be desperate for you to discuss. So I'm going to pause again for a minute, and we'll take another opportunity to talk about some of these things. Now, what I've just said might have raised loads of questions. Sorry, I'm playing with the button, guys. Might have raised loads of questions. In which case, just ask those questions, or just raise the point. If you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't agree with any of this, or I'm not sure I understand it, or I don't think I believe it, then turn to the person next to you, again, as long as you're prepared for them to ask you, well, why? But if you need some help to discuss these things, here's a couple more questions. That's not them. Here they are. Here's a couple of questions. How does Jesus' response to shame differ from it might be if you're not from the UK, your culture's common response? How could a response like Jesus's free us from that fear of being seen that we were talking about earlier? I'll give you another few minutes, and then I'll be back again shortly. I'm going to break into your conversations just once more there. As I say, there's going to be more opportunity for us to discuss these things just as I finish and then over dinner. So do keep thinking them through. One of the things that the Christian Union and I want to do this week as well is to give an opportunity for people to share a little bit of their own story of how they have encountered the good news when it comes to the person of Jesus, the person that claims of Jesus. And so each evening we're going to hear from someone who's a current student at Warwick, and this evening we're going to hear from Connor. So if you'd welcome him up. Connor, come and join me. There you go. We're going to sit up here, Connor, so come take a seat with me. Just change the energy and sit together. So Connor, I've told everyone your name's Connor. Tell us some other things about you. What do you study, where you're from, that kind of thing.
I study engineering. I'm second year. I'm from Cambridge.
It's a good place to be from. It's where I'm from too, at the moment. Yeah, okay. So you grew up in Cambridge. And we've met. You were talking to me earlier on, and you were telling me about growing up and kind of how it was growing up. What was your view of God as you grew up, Connor?
Yeah, so growing up I was quite kind of skeptical of God. I wasn't too sure if God was real. I grew up in a Catholic household, so I kind of attended the Catholic masses each Sunday. Helps like serving on the altar, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like God definitely wasn't a very real presence to me, and yeah, I guess I had a lot of questions. Yeah,
so not a very real presence, but I'm guessing in Catholic kind of environment there was quite a lot of ritual and sort of understanding of doing the right things. Is that fair?
Yeah, there was quite a lot of, I had a pretty solid sense of kind of these moral values that people talk about, and that was like a big thing of how I was thinking of like, this is how I should be living, this is how to live a good life, all that kind of stuff. But I guess there wasn't much of the why. It was kind of just rules that I was seeing everyone else around me follow. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of a sort of an idea of a set of shoulds, sort of some rules that you need to keep by. But then, as you came up to sort of heading up towards university, you were telling me that things began to change a little bit, and your view of God began to change a bit, slightly less distant. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So growing a bit older, I was sort of questioning some of these bigger questions of, why am I here? What happens after I die? All this kind of stuff. And that really did make me question in a way that I hadn't before of, is God real? And so when I was about 16, with some of my friends from sixth form, I started going to a church, also in Cambridge, but and I started to hear more about the Bible, hear more about God's character, and that was really intriguing to me because I'd always had an idea of God, but never a firm grasp on who he is. Yeah, I think that was sort of kind of.
So kind of a bit more of a warming towards the idea of God. And then you head up to university, head across to, which direction are we from Cambridge? Across, let's go with across. Head over to Warwick, start university, and what happened there? You sort of throw yourself into university life. What happens at that stage?
Yeah, so coming into Freshers Week, I'd heard a lot about the different university experiences and things. So I was looking to get very stuck in. Growing up, I'd always been a key thing had been always being very open-minded, and in that sense, I did try and get really stuck in, and the rules changed on how to live a fulfilling life. Right, when I was back home, it was all about hanging out with my friends and some of those things I talked about before. But as soon as I got to university, it was very much going out to on a pub crawl or things like that, and it was it was a very different experience. I think in both cases, I was looking for the right way to live, the reason, for what I should be spending my time on. And at university, it seemed like that meant, going out each night. But after the hubbub of Freshers Week had kind of died down, reflecting on some of those experiences, which were very new, it became clear that there was something still missing. So the things that I had originally lived by, of kind of good morals and things like that, were conflicting with the some of the activities towards the start of university. I remember specifically there'd just be instances of things I'd say to fit in, and immediately after saying them, kind of grimacing a little bit, because there was like an internal struggle, right, of wanting to fit in, but having this idea from the things I'd heard about in the Bible of that's maybe not how I ought to live, right? Yeah.
So you have these sort of two worlds. You've got the world of your growing up with the shoulds that you talked about there, the kind of the morals, the idea that God felt a bit distant, but there was a set of rules there. And then you have the new world of university. It's fascinating that you use the phrase "the rules changed." The idea that there were other rules to live by there. Now you would say you're kind of living in it a different way entirely. What's made the difference from kind of those two kind of competing sets of rules? What's made the difference to you now?
Yeah, so there was that struggle between the kind of two different ways of living, and I think through reading more of the Bible and prayer, like prayer was a very big thing in the past. When I prayed, it was a very loose kind of, God, if you're real, can you show yourself to me? And through reading the Bible, I was understanding more and more about God's character, and it became clear that the priorities that I should have in life shouldn't be based on like the specific environment I'm in, but the Bible talks about knowing God, the creator of heaven and earth, the one who made you, and that, in my mind, just became absolutely top priority over all things. So it was no longer I've got a really strict kind of set of rules to follow. Although, I will say moral like things are still good to like the Bible talks all about that. But it was no longer that, and it was no longer the top thing is wanting to fit in. But it became, how can I grow in relationship to God? Because I suppose this sounds kind of silly saying it now, but knowing the creator of heaven and earth, the greatest love in the whole universe is, that should be the top thing, right? The top priority. So yeah, as soon as that kind of became clear, I think maybe partway through my first year, maybe halfway through, a lot of some of these sort of other activities lost their flavor, right? Because I was starting to think, why am I doing these things? Who is it benefiting? Ultimately, it's not helping me get closer to God. So I think that was how that struggle kind of resolved itself. That trusting in the Bible and what it says about God, and trusting in God was the only thing that I needed. It was no longer to follow some rules or to be really well liked by all of my peers, or have the best stories to tell about however many nights out I've been on. The priorities changed.
And the priorities shifted. He's worth it, right? He becomes the highest one worth over all of that acceptance, either in keeping the right moral rules or in keeping the right social rules, I guess. Fascinating. And now, kind of today, how would you describe to the way that your experience of life is in comparison to the sort of those kind of sets of rules? You know, what is it like to live that life now?
Yeah, so every day I'm trying to follow what God wants me to do, to be obedient to what He wants me to do, and that means to love all those around me. In certain circumstances, if friends are inviting me to go on a pub crawl, things like this, sometimes, and it is tricky, but sometimes the thing is I do have to say, I really want to hang out with you, and I really want to spend time with you, but I don't think it's right to be in that situation, right? Sorry, I don't know how to.
It's okay.
That's the thing that I think feels very different, because I know that the validation and everything like that I can get from hanging out with people doesn't compare to the ultimate relationship and the love that can be found in God. So I think if that sort of sums it up.
That's a wonderful way of summing it up. Thank you so much, Connor. Can we give Connor a round of applause? Say thank you. Thank you. I wonder if you can sense the thread that runs through Connor's story as he's told it there, which is very, very different to the story that we've heard of Jesus' encounter with the woman. But that there is a sense in which, for Connor, those rules that he was seeking to try and kind of live by, whether it was the rules that he'd experienced in his upbringing in the Catholic Church, or whether it was the rules of kind of social engagement at university that he was trying to kind of be acceptable by, have been replaced by, did you hear what he said at the end? Have been replaced by a relationship. And for this woman that we've just been hearing about, she is on the wrong side of all of the conventions of her society. 12 years of pain, embarrassment, shame, ostracization, no prospects. And all of that gets wiped away in a moment. The pain is removed with a touch. And the shame is removed with a word, as Jesus calls her daughter. But the question might be, you'd be very within your rights to ask it. Well, that's great. Why is Luke telling us this story? It's great for her. And why is Connor telling us his story? It's lovely for him. I'm really happy that he's found that kind of place in his life. That's great. But what about me? What's that got to do with me? The point is, as we hold these books in our hands, we are holding an invitation. We're holding an invitation from Luke, who wants to give us the confidence that Jesus is who Luke says he is. And that Jesus can offer that same relationship with God to each one of us that he offered to those he encountered. He invites us, Luke, to take our place in this story. And that was brought home to me a few years ago when I got to know somebody at university, a friend of mine, who had grown up in a family where she was constantly reminded that she would never live up to the impossible exacting standards that her father, her dad, set for her. That was pretty much her relationship with her dad. I'll never meet his standards. She described in her teens that she got to a point where she decided there was no point really trying to meet anyone else's standards either, or even her own. And she entered into a destructive cycle of alcohol and sex and more alcohol and more sex. And this is how she described herself at the time. She said, "I felt I was only worth treating as the trash I felt I was." Shame built up, and she sought to bury it, often with more destructive behavior, which led to more shame, until at one point she began to consider even taking her own life. But then when she was in that moment, one day, someone pointed her to this woman in Luke, opened up that page with her and read her that story. And this is what she said. She said, "I saw myself in her rags, kneeling in front of Jesus. I knew I shouldn't have been there either in front of him. My shame was beating in my chest and threatening to overtake me. But then I saw Jesus smile, and I heard his words, 'Daughter, go in peace.'" And she said, that changed everything. And the point is, who is this man who calls that woman daughter? For 7 chapters up to this point, Luke has already been insisting, and he will go on insisting till the end of his book, that Jesus is God's king in God's world, acting with God's power in God's world. Which means the one that he says is calling her daughter is the one who has the power to confer the title princess. Not shame, but honor. And that is the heart of the Christian message. That is why we've called this week Good News. That's why this is good news, because Jesus is God himself, God's King, who has stepped from immeasurable glory into the rags of our humanity. He is already on his way to Jerusalem by this point in Luke's gospel, in Luke's account, where he is going to undergo the shame and the scandal of crucifixion. He is going to die pinned to a cross, naked, dying a death that literally invented the word excruciating from the cross. Not because he was carrying his own shame, because he is the one person who lived without it, but because he was carrying ours. He stooped from glory to lift us to glory, that we might be sons and daughters of the King. And that is Luke's invite. That is Jesus' invite for every one of us from the pages of this book. That we might hear, that you might hear the words of Jesus with a smile on his face, with a spark in his eyes. Daughter, son, your faith has saved you. And so as we close this evening, I simply want to ask this question. Can you see that that is good news? Can you see that if it's true, it's really good? You see, if you don't see that the claims at the heart of Christianity, if they're true, are not just good news, but the best news ever, the kind of news that should cause dancing in the streets, and up there with the kind of the cancer diagnosis is gone, or war is over. Beyond that even, if you can't see that, then I'm going to tell you, you haven't understood the claims of Christianity. And I would say you owe it to yourself to see why it's good news, and then to work out whether it might just be true. As I close, I want to suggest a few things that you could do to explore that a little bit more. The first is take a copy of Luke's Gospel away with you. These copies of Luke's Gospel are specially designed to be read with a friend. They have like little reflections and things you can in through the pages that you can open up. You can read with a friend over a coffee in a coffee shop or at home. So take a copy if you've not done this before, and ask maybe someone you came with or a Christian friend to read this with you. They'd be delighted to. The second thing that you might do is check out the bookstall that the CU have set up over in the corner at the back there. And there are loads of books on there that you can explore a little bit more. They're completely free if you want to take one. I want to highlight one which is called Finding More, Real Life Stories Worth Telling, which is written by a couple of friends of mine And it is an excellent resource of just hearing a few more stories like Connor's story, like this woman's story, of what it meant for different people to encounter Jesus, meeting them, calling them son, daughter. And the final thing, come back. We've got loads more events over the next 3 days. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's 3 events each day, at least 3 events each day. Each one is on the flyer thing that's on the table in front of you. You can find out what they are. Come along, find out a little bit more. And we would love to see you back. But just for now, the last thing I'd love you to do is that we're going to put a QR code up on the screen in a moment. And I would really love everyone to grab their phone. Like, say that everybody's doing it. Nobody feels ashamed. That's the theme of the evening, right? So let's look after one another. If you could all scan that feedback form, what that will do is that will take you to a form that's a pretty simple form, in which you can write a little bit of a response to what you've heard tonight. Now, you might just want to write whatever you thought. That's absolutely fine. But can I suggest that in the response, in the box that says response, you might just want to write 4 words. You could write, well, thanks for the food. We're about to have some food. If you haven't got much more to say and you feel you don't want to say anything more, then just write that. You might want to write, I will come back. We'd love to see you. You might want to write, this is all rubbish. Fine. Like I said at the beginning, it doesn't bother me if you disagree with this, but I do want you to keep on investigating it because I think it is worth it. But there might be 2 other responses that you might want to write. You might want to write, read Luke with me, in which case also drop your contact details there and a member of the Christian Union will be in touch to start working through Uncover Luke's Gospel with you. Or you might want to write, invite me to church. Going to church for the first time can sometimes be really awkward. Like, what do people do? What do you have to wear? Like, what's it going to be like? But going with a friend makes it a lot easier. So if you write, invite me to church and drop your contact details, again, someone from the Christian Union will be in touch with you to invite you along. We'd love you to fill in that form. Do take a minute to do that. The QR code is going to stay up on the screen so that you can. But there is a lot for us to talk about and think about from what we've talked about tonight. And it might be triggering all sorts of questions and thoughts in your head. You might be thinking, I don't think I agreed with that, or this doesn't make any sense. That's absolutely fine. In a moment, we're going to pause again for our last discussion moment. You can turn to the person next to you and say, this doesn't make any sense. As I said earlier, just be prepared for them to ask why. What is it that doesn't make sense? But for the last time, we're going to put another couple of questions up on the screen. Here they are. If you need them to keep on chatting, what difference could it make to you to be fully seen without fear of shame in the way that woman was by Jesus? And if they're feeling brave enough, and if you're feeling brave enough, and there's someone on the table to ask a Christian friend, what difference knowing Jesus has made to their experience of shame? And have an opportunity to hear a little bit about their story. That's all from me. Thank you so much for listening. We're gonna pause for that discussion. So get chatting around your tables, and then our hosts will come and close the evening out in a few minutes. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry to bring your discussions to a close. I just wanted to reiterate that if this talk resonated with you or anything from this evening resonated with you, some people here would love to read a gospel with you or love to read some books from the bookstore with you. So anyone in one of these hoodies or anyone that you know from the Christian Union or friend that you went with, please, please let them know. I'm sure they'd be extremely happy to have a chat with you or read the gospel. And then for those who don't know, the gospel is the good news of Jesus. It's one of the first 4 books. It's the 4 books in the Bible that tell us a direct account of the life of Jesus, and it's quite literally the good news, and it's what we heard today. So make sure that you ask a friend or ask someone to read that with you. And then there's a bookstore over there, right at the back. Just to say again, they cover loads of different questions that people might have about Christianity. You can pick up a free copy of the gospel. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. I'm hungry. I'm sure everyone else is hungry. Dinner will be served soon. When it starts coming out, people can walk over and the stewards can point you in the direction where to go for that. But also this week, there's so much going on. Don't miss out. Tomorrow, we have the question and response session in the morning. So pick up one of these, and that tells you everything that's going on. But that'll be a great opportunity if you have questions, if you disagree with some stuff which has been said, or you're just interested. Honestly, ask whatever question comes to mind. Perhaps you have something you've been thinking about for a long time. That's your chance to ask it in the morning then. But there's stuff all day, and lunch and dinner, like's been said already. There's also board games after dinner, so do stay for that. Do chat, make some friends. And food will be out shortly, I do promise. So when that starts coming up, go and walk over there. But thanks again, everyone, for coming. We hope you found the talk interesting, and we hope we see you again.
Thank you.